Joining us now on Somehow We Managed is longtime crew chief and broadcaster, Mr. Larry McReynolds. Larry Mack, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, and hope you are as well, Caegan. Just hanging out and watching these races. Seem like they're coming about twice a week right now.
Right. Well, it's an honor to have you on today. Talk a little bit about racing. Like I said, it's no secret to anyone that you've been involved with racing for many years now. And my initial question for you is, how would you describe the current state of NASCAR?
Honestly, if you'd have asked me that about 10 or 12 years ago, I'd have went, I'm not sure. I'm a little concerned. I'm a little worried. I've been here for 43 years. This is my 23rd year to be with NASCAR on Fox. I was in the garage area for 20 years, a crew chief for 17. And I just felt like we had lost our way. I felt like we didn't really have good leadership. That car tomorrow that came out in 2007, it almost became a car disaster. And I just didn't feel like we were in a right place. But I feel like today we are definitely trending in the right direction. I think the leadership we have with Steve Phelps, with Jim France, with Lisa France Kennedy, Mike Kelton, everybody over there in the competition side of NASCAR, they're thinking outside the box. They're not afraid of change. And I think that's important. I even look at things as simple as our schedule. For so many years, you pretty much could just take this year's schedule and put it through a copier and change the year by 1 year, and you knew you had the new schedule. We just did the same thing, went to the same places over and over and over and over. And now they're thinking outside the box and they're trying things. And I think the fans are definitely embracing that, as far as people that go to the racetrack and people tuning in on the broadcast.
So I'm glad you brought up the car of tomorrow, right? It's been a lot of criticism about that over the years. What is your response to that criticism?
Well, I think it was rightly so. It did not give us good competition. The drivers did not embrace it, the way it drove, the way it handled, the way it reacted. And I think when we finally migrated away from it, especially when we got away from that wing, I think when we made the change back to the rear spoiler, that was definitely a step in the right direction. But I will say, this Gen 7 car, this next gen car, it's done a lot for our sport. Yeah, we went through some growing pains with it. We're almost a year and a third with it. Heck, we've had 21 different winners with this car. So I think that right there says a lot. I think it's closed the gap on competition a little bit. It's given teams like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and that 47 team an opportunity to win the Daytona 500 as they did earlier this year. I think about Front Row Motorsports and some of the races that Michael McDowell and that 34 team has had over the last few years. I think it's made it with a lot of unknowns and very unpredictable, which quite honestly I think is a good thing.
How does a NASCAR race differ from other sporting events?
In a lot of ways. I realize there are other sports that has an outside element involved above and beyond just the athlete. I mean, I think about someone that competes in horse racing. They're obviously at the mercy of that horse. But when you look at racing, yeah, you've got the athlete, that's the driver. But you've got this 3,500 pound race car that has thousands of working parts and pieces that can be your best friend or can be your worst enemy on any given race day. And, the other thing, to me, there's a lot of things, Caegan, that sits it apart. A football field, even though they're all over the country, and whether you're in NFL or college, you'll go to different fields. And, yeah, the environment may be different, but the football field is the same distance. It's the same width. It's the same length. The goalposts are in the same place. A basketball court, no matter what arena you go to, it's absolutely the same. Probably the closest thing to racing on that side of it would be maybe what golfers go through. We know every golf course they play on has 18 holes, but they're all very, very different. And we go to 20-something different tracks, and every one of them is very, very different. But then I think the other thing is we are 1 versus 36, 37, 38 every single week. I know we have our all-star race that's coming up here in a couple of weeks at North Wilkesboro, but we have an all-star race every single week. Every one of our stars is on that racetrack every week racing each other. So I'd say there's a fairly lengthy list of things that kind of sets our sport aside from other sports. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying it's worse. It's just very different.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Intimidator, right? So how would you describe Dale Earnhardt on a personal level?
On a personal level, when he wasn't buckled inside that black number 3, you wouldn't find a more genuine, down-to-earth guy that would absolutely give you the shirt off of his back. You know, the things that I picked up on, that I heard, that I saw Dale do for people in need, it was a list as long as my arm. And he didn't want notoriety for it. He didn't want publicity. In fact, I know there were a few times he helped somebody and he point blank told them, if you share with anybody that I've helped you, I'm going to be very upset. I'm not doing it for publicity or notoriety. I'm doing it because I want to help you. And even though him and I were separated halfway through 1998 just simply because of lack of performance, he still, until the day he passed away, was a very, very dear friend of mine.
There are a lot of people that still would argue that he's the biggest superstar racing has ever seen. In your words, what exactly did he mean to NASCAR?
I think a lot of things. He was that blue collar racer. I think that fans could resonate and relate to. You know, he worked on that farm, you know, Monday through Wednesday, Monday through Thursday, whatever days he had. His workout program was carrying bales of hay on his shoulder from one place to the other on his farm. I think people felt like that if I could meet this guy, him and I could sit down and have a beer or two together and we could relate to one another. But I think the biggest thing internally within the garage area, Caegan, was when he spoke, people listened. And he was an amazing ambassador for our sport. I say all the time, he was kind of the Elvis Presley of NASCAR. You know, when Elvis Presley passed away, rock and roll music didn't stop. It's still going today, but it changed. And I see the same with Dale Earnhardt. When we lost him in February of 2001, NASCAR didn't stop. We were right there the next week at Rockingham Racing, but it changed. And it's still even very, very different today.
What do you remember most about his competitive spirit?
Yeah, it did not matter if it was a teammate, maybe a driver like Steve Park or Dale Earnhardt Jr., his son, somebody within the manufacturer, or somebody totally outside of teammates and manufacturer, that you were the next person that was trying to work to keep him from winning the race. And he didn't discriminate. He'd spin Dale Earnhardt Jr. out to get by him, no different than he would somebody driving maybe a Ford or something. And the thing I remember about him, and I think that's probably why they called him the Intimidator, is if you were another driver and you looked up in that rearview mirror and you saw the front end of that black number 3, you knew you better pick the pace up or you better get out of the way, because his philosophy is, I'm going to tap you once and let you know I'm here. I might tap you a second time just to make sure you know I'm here. If I have to tap you a third time, it's going to be more a tap and you're probably going to be going around.
What did it mean for him to finally be able to win that Daytona 500 in 1998?
You know, he didn't really promote that much how much he wanted to win that race, but working with him all through the 1997 season, I knew how bad that man wanted to win it. He'd won everything you could win at Daytona multiple times. Xfinity Series, the July race, the Busch Clash, the dual races. He just could not close the deal on the 500. And he came so close so many times. I think about 1990, the flat tire going off into turn 3 on the final lap. I think about running out of gas after leading. I think about an engine blowing up. Heck, one year he even hit a seagull on the back straightaway and killed the front end. So anything and everything that could happen to keep him from winning that race, it truly had happened. And, you know, a lot of people today look at me and go, you're the man. You're the man that got him that Daytona 500 win. And that's very flattering that I hear that. But I just happened to be the guy in place when all those other things didn't happen. I feel very blessed and very fortunate. But I remember right before we clipped that window net, just after he had fired the engine, he kind of pulled me in the car by my shirt collar and said, "We got a good race car. You just keep me up front, and you just get me to the rear bumper of the guy leading this thing in the final laps. His day will go bad. I can promise you." I knew how bad that man wanted to win it, and it was very rewarding for me. Yeah, I had won it in 92 with Davey, Allison, so it was very rewarding to me personally to get my second Daytona 500. But it meant a lot because I remember in Victory Lane, after things had kind of calmed down a little bit, but they were still taking pictures, I remember kind of taking a step back and just kind of watching the scene, watching Dale and Teresa Earnhardt, watching Richard and Judy Childress. Look how many years they'd been trying. Richard as a driver and for many years as an owner. And it almost was like watching your kids open presents on Christmas morning. You could just see how special it was to them, which made it very special to me.
So you spoke earlier about the day we lost Dale Earnhardt. What exactly did that mean for racing, and how did it change racing?
Well, again, like I said earlier, he was the Elvis Presley of NASCAR, and it changed, I think, the way the sport ran, because even the people that ran NASCAR, they listened to Dale Earnhardt. They paid attention, and it affected a lot of fans. You know, here we are over 22 years later, and I will periodically run into people that go, "When we lost Dale, I just lost my interest in NASCAR." And they said, "You know, I'll still watch, but I'm just not as interested as I was." So, I mean, and that's still 22 years later. But on the flip side, 22 years later, you go to the races, you still see a guy in the grandstands wearing that black number 3 hat or wearing that Dale Earnhardt t-shirt, or you see that flag hanging on the back of a motorhome in the infield. He just impacted the sport so much greater, I think, than even, you know, not to take anything away from Richard Petty, but I think he even impacted our sport more so than the King himself.
How did your perspective change going from crew chief to broadcaster?
Yeah, it was a very tough decision. It's something that my wife and I, and even my kids, debated and talked about for a very lengthy period of time. I never saw myself doing anything but being a crew chief. I figured when they put me 6 foot under, I'd still be saying 4 tires next time. But never say never. You know, I got the opportunity with Fox. It actually came along in early 2000, 2001. And I remember eventually finally making the decision to do it. They were only offering me a 2-year deal. So I felt like if I took it and they didn't like me or I didn't like them, I could do what we've seen many people do in sports. You could always go back. I knew I was still going to stay very close to the sport, but it was the decision that me and my family made, and one I've never looked back on. Now, people ask me, do I miss being a crew chief? Absolutely, I miss it. If I didn't miss it, that means I wasted 17 years of my life. But I love what I'm doing now. You know, some people will go through life and really not even be able to say that they had one very rewarding career. I can say now, and I hope I'm still doing it for many years to come, that I feel very blessed and fortunate as a guy from Birmingham, Alabama, that barely got my high school diploma, that I've not only had one rewarding career, but I've actually had 2. But now I feel like with the role I play with NASCAR on Fox, that I'm actually crew chief for every team out there, because that's kind of how I look at it. I look at what this team's doing. I look at what this team's doing, what strategy this team's on. The good thing about what I do now, I don't have to take the heat from my owner on Monday morning about a bad pit call I made on Sunday. All I do is talk about them now.
What advice do you have for young people looking to go into broadcasting?
That it's not it's not an easy road. If you think about it, it's a very small group of people that do it. And it's a very large group of people that want to do it. But I guess what I would say to them is the same thing that I say to people that want to get into NASCAR as a mechanic and maybe eventually become a crew chief. Just don't give up on it. You know, people told me for the longest as I was trying to pursue a NASCAR career, including my parents, this is the craziest thing we've ever heard. You can't do that. That's not going to work. But you got to believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, how can you expect anyone else to believe in you? But just do anything you can, even if it's for volunteer, even if it's like an internship, to put stuff in your resume, stuff in your portfolio. Anything you can do to build that up, that's only going to help. And yeah, you're going to knock on doors, and there's doors that's either not going to open, or there's doors that may open and get slammed. Just don't give up. Thank God I didn't give up on my dream, 40 something years ago.
How difficult is it when you're standing in front of the camera? Races can be very, very long. How difficult is it to continually find things to say and to keep your audience engaged?
I have not found that to be a challenge, but think about this. If you look at our NASCAR on Fox broadcast today, we have a play-by-play guy. We have two analysts in the booth with him, with Mike Joy. We have myself in my own analyst booth. We have two, sometimes three pit reporters. That's a lot of voices. So you can pass the ball around a lot. But I think when you're as passionate about a sport like I'm passionate about NASCAR, I never get tired of talking about it, and I never run out of stuff to talk about, because honestly, I almost live, eat, sleep, and breathe it 24/7. But it's a job. It's a great job. I've made an amazing living as a crew chief and now a broadcaster for myself and my family. But I feel so blessed to be able to get paid for something that I love doing.
Give me your top 5 racing venues.
Top 5 racing venues. Well, and I always tell people, ask me, what's your favorite racetrack or racing venues? And I always tell them, and this was my attitude when I was a crew chief, the next one we're going to, because I felt like that's the mentality I needed to have, and maybe it would become contagious to my driver and my crew. But if you ask me to list the top 5, I would start with my home track, which is Talladega, and was able to win there in 1992 with Davey, Allison. Davey's home track. Even though I've been in the Carolinas for 40-something years, I still look at Alabama as home. So Talladega would be probably right there. Sonoma, I love the road course. We won the very first race at Sonoma in 1989 with Ricky Rudd, the 26 car. And I've been fortunate enough to win there 3 times with actually 3 different drivers: Rudd in 89, Davey Allison in 91, and Ernie Irvin in 94. I would say Martinsville, love the short track. One of the neatest little short tracks that we obviously go to. We go there twice a year. I was fortunate enough to win there with Ernie Irvin in the fall of 1993. I would say another short track, Bristol. I prefer the concrete Bristol. I'm okay, and I enjoy the dirt Bristol, but I prefer the concrete Bristol. And it's one of those tracks that I never got to win at. Came close many, many times, but just the atmosphere, especially in the August race, the Saturday night race under the lights, there'll be over 100,000 people there. And to me, it's one of the neatest times of our sport is when they take that green flag and it looks like about 1 million flash bulbs going off on cameras with people taking pictures. Love Bristol, especially in August, especially on the concrete at night. And I guess my 5th one, I would probably have to go with Daytona, the other super speedway. It's the birthplace of speed. It's where we kick off the season every year with the Daytona 500. And again, being fortunate enough to win there twice in the 500, 92 with Davey and 98 with Dale. But I love them all. And right now, as you and I are doing this, my favorite track is Kansas, because that's where we go this week.
So I want to give you a little scenario. You're starting a new team with 1 past driver and 1 current driver. Who would those 2 individuals be?
I guess past driver would be the driver that probably helped put Larry McReynolds on the NASCAR map, along with Robert Yates Racing. Not only was he a guy that I loved working with, we won a lot of races together. We came so close to winning the 1992 championship, and he was my best friend, and that would be the late Davey Allison. Just so smart, just always thinking and talented, didn't have any weak racetracks. So he would definitely be my driver from the past. And I guess if we looked at drivers of current, I would probably go with Kyle Larson. That guy, I think if you put him on a lawnmower out in the back alley, he would figure out how to go fast. His talent is just off the chart. And obviously, since he joined Hendrick Motorsports, I think we've kind of seen that talent come to the surface.
All right, and as we close things here, I want to talk to you a little bit about your beloved Crimson Tide. How do you see things playing out for them this year on the gridiron?
Well, every year I'm very, very nervous, especially when you lose players like we lost last year with Bryce Young, our quarterback, with Will Anderson Jr., the linebacker, who went third in the draft. But I've learned year after year after year, never doubt Nick Saban. We lost our two coordinators. Pete Golding, who'd been a defensive coordinator there ever since Kirby Smart left, he went and joined Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. So we got a defensive coordinator spot to fill. Bill O'Brien, our offensive coordinator, my heart is not totally broken over Bill leaving. He went back to the NFL. I just felt like he had that NFL mentality, and I'm not sure that play calling was right for college football. But I've been watching this Melrose, this quarterback that was back up to Bryce Young. He's a cowboy now. He'll fling that football 80 yards if you let him. But hopefully it's not a rebuilding year. I'm not too much on rebuilding years, and neither is Nick Saban. I'll keep the faith, and we'll see where we stack up.
Well, Saban never really seems to rebuild. He seems to reload.
He's reloading as we speak.
How many more years do you see Saban at Alabama?
Well, he just signed another extension about a year ago. Every time I think there's no way this guy, is going to keep doing it. But I think as long as he enjoys it, and as long as he feels like he's on top of his game, those sidelines, they don't know how old that coach is. And I feel like as long as he feels like he's relevant, that he'll keep doing it. And hopefully it'll be for a while.
And you think he has to win at least one more national championship. Do you think he can win multiple before he retires?
It's getting tougher and tougher. You just got these teams that just keep getting better and better. Obviously, Georgia now has won back-to-back national championships. They seem like they just keep reloading. I see out there USC, they seem like they're getting stronger and stronger. Of course, Ohio State, you never take your eye off that group up there in Columbus. Texas, Sarkisian, that came from Alabama. I went and watched Alabama play Texas this past fall out there in Austin. He looks like he's really building that program up. So we'll just take them one at a time. We'll be happy if we can get number 19 in the house.
Do you get the chance to see a lot of Alabama away games?
Not like I'd like to because of my schedule.
Right.
Even though Fox, we end our season here in about a month, mid-June, and NBC takes over, we still have studio shows essentially every weekend. Fox was good enough to give me a weekend off last year. Again, as I mentioned, my wife and I went down to Austin to watch them play Texas. I've been to a lot of their bowl games. I've been to a lot of their national championship games because, again, that's during our off season. But my wife and I just the other day were talking about maybe getting down to Tuscaloosa and at least taking in one game. I think they play Tennessee at home this year. We got a little bit of redemption because the old Orange beat us this past year, so we might go down there and watch them play those Volunteers.
Well, I like to ask most of my guests, because they're typically sports guests, their favorite venues, their favorite college towns. So of the places that you've seen Alabama play, what would you say are some of your favorites?
Going to the Rose Bowl in 2009. It was Saban's first national championship with Alabama. Of course, he had won the national championship with LSU. But to go there to really what's, gosh, maybe the most famous college football stadium maybe in the world, and to see Alabama, Greg McElroy, Mark Ingram, who won the Heisman Trophy that year, beat Texas in that national championship game. The game was very special, but that venue, it's almost like Augusta, the golf course. TV and pictures can't do it justice. You've got to go there and experience it. I think I love going to New Orleans and going down there to the Sugar Bowl. My wife and I have been to watch them play. We didn't go this past year. We've been down there a number of years and watch them play in the Sugar Bowl. And then a few years back, Hard Rock Stadium down in Miami, we watched them go play Notre Dame and beat that group for the national championship. So as you notice, a lot of them are where I've been to see bowl games, but that's kind of the gist of when I get to see them, is more so when NASCAR is in the off season.
Well, we'll close on that. Larry Mack, we appreciate you coming on and joining us today. It's always a treat to hear guys, sharing about NASCAR. We wish you the very, very best of luck moving forward. And as we close here, can I get your best Roll Tide Roll? Try not to get too hoarse there.
No, absolutely not. No. Roll Tide Roll. Sweet home Alabama.
No, so I take it there's no War Eagle in your household.
No, Auburn is close enough to Georgia. We let Georgia claim Auburn. It's right there on the state line. So what we have in the state of Alabama, we've got Talladega and we got Tuscaloosa.
I like that. Talladega and Tuscaloosa. Well, thank you again. It's been an honor talking to you. We appreciate it.
Well, the pleasure was mine. Hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of 2023. 15 races to go in the regular season, and it's going to get interesting just like it did last year.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you again. It's been an honor talking to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.